The mayor and the administration are pushing this item, which obligates you to many things that I don't think this city council yet understands. And then today I got an email reiterating, I think what the mayor just said, was that they believe they can move forward and want to move forward. Did I have any questions? This project initially, as told to me by Jason Phillips, was a $15 million project. And scaled down most recently to somewhere around a $5 million project, or now dollars yet to be determined. So they released a request for qualifications, and this timeline is important. They released a request for qualifications in October of 2018. They received 4 firms' responses, including a document stating that the requests for qualifications by the city of Findlay were too restrictive. Then the administration at the time, in November of 2018, gave a letter with an intent to award Suez an unspecified contract. As of today, no contract is in place, there's been no PO, and no other agreements in place that we know of. And we learned a couple weeks ago that this was not a bid contract now, it's a design-build contract, which is a statutory process, and none of the documents that have been released up to this point use those words or express the fact that this is a design-build contract. And we're 2+ years later, and Suez has done a lot of work with no contract, no payment, and no fees charged. It makes me wonder why. Okay, that being said, the design-build process is statutory. I can go into that and explain a little more if anybody would like that, but it does not appear that we followed the design-build process. But actually, that's beside the point. It appears the engineering process has been flawed from the start. In my view, the documents show that the request for qualifications that Suez won was developed improperly. 2 documents from a reputable firm state the request for qualifications was too restrictive, and there are other solutions that are less costly. In my view, the documents show that Daryl Bowling from Suez and Jason Phillips from our water department had inappropriate communications, and Suez directly influenced the request for qualifications development at Findlay's request as early as July of 2018. Documents show Jason Phillips and Daryl Bowling from Suez began communications as early as July 13, 2018. And as an example, an email dated August 31st, 2018, remember the bid was let or was released, the RFQ in October, provides a 14-point recommendation from Suez. All 14 points are in the request for qualifications released by Findlay that Suez won. So again, the documents show that there were RFQ development discussions between Findlay Water Department and Suez months before we issued the request for qualifications that Suez won. So we are talking about, over the life of this agreement, where we're headed with what's been done here, millions of dollars, and a process which appears flawed from the beginning, from my view. In my view, at best, Suez had an unfair advantage and other solutions were barred. At worst, this is a completely improper process and has characteristics of re-specifications and potentially collusion. Design-build is a statutory process with an architect engineer and a design-build firm. They can't be the same, and state rules apply regarding the relationships. If Findlay Engineering is the architect engineer, then in my view, they improperly included Suez in the RFQ development process, and the design-build process is incomplete. If Suez is the architect engineer, then the request for qualifications development for selection was improper. No contract exists, and there should be one at this point for design. And the next step then would be to issue RFQs and then request for proposals from the qualified design builders. So as the city auditor and the fiscal officer for the city, I do not see how I could execute a contract or pay expenses associated with this project as it stands today. Mr. Russell, I want to thank you for those comments because I think they're appropriate. And I also want to share with the entire council, including the ones who've been here for a few years, that when we do the budget process annually, I've made a point of stressing in that budget book that this is the risk you take based on how you're passing legislation. You passed a multi-million-dollar, or in components of multi-million-dollar capital plans where you give the administration authority to go out and bid and contract up front without knowing whether they're about to bid and contract something that you can completely approve of or that's been completely considered prior to it happening. A lot of times that's great. It allows us to run at the speed of business. But as I've said over and over again, you end up in situations where you risk this. And to Mr. Welch's question, we don't have a contract in place. Why don't we have a contract in place? Part of that is, until a couple weeks ago, our office had no idea that this was a design build process. A design build process requires that you go out and RFQ the qualifying architect or engineer who does exactly what Mr. Schindeldecker has suggested, create the system. If we are the architect engineer, that's great. We're supposed to register that we are and do that, or have another firm go through that RFQ process, negotiate with the best one. If you can't enter into a design contract, go to the next one. But ultimately what's interesting is, if you're negotiating with the design builder now, the statutes are clear, at least from the white paper that I have from Rick Reckler that I got from Googling design build in the state of Ohio. It says that not only do you RFQ the design builders, you take the best three and you RFP them, you request proposals from them. So this is a very, very complex process. There are complex answers to your questions, and I feel badly that it is the third hour, but I think it reflects on not just the administrative processes, but the council committee processes. I think we all need to come up and take a look at this, regardless of what committee it would be, whether it be water and sewer, appropriations, or another committee where spending is done. But this is something that's been addressed, and it would not be fair to state that this is another surprise, because it's not, and it's the potential consequence of how we do appropriation and bidding legislation.
Mr. Russell.
So it's so this project has been going on for 2 years, and it's just suddenly a surprise. Like, did you not know what was happening? Did you not reach out to the engineer? Has the engineer never discussed this with you? How can this be a surprise? And at some point in time, don't you look in the mirror and say, maybe it's me?
No, I don't do that, and I can tell you that we
Just
just
a second. Let's
Thank you.
calm down the rhetoric, boys. All right, thank you.
When our department learns, we assist in any way we can. We regularly assist. A lot of times you see adjustment legislation as a result of our assistance. But when the administration is moving forward on something, this legislation was for bidding and entering into an agreement for meters. Not DCUs, not transmitters, not an AMI system that's going to impact how you run your water department. When we learned that was the same time your Water and Sewer Committee learned that very recently. And we've stayed involved, we've asked the questions. We brought up the question, hey, do you have authority to even bid this? That came from my deputy auditor when we were both sitting here in the committee meeting. So again, to frame that in the manner it's being framed is inappropriate, and I think above and beyond. And we will continue to work to assist everyone as best as we can. But occasionally you're going to end up in situations where this council can be embarrassed if you continue to go down the path of allowing monies to be appropriated for bidding and entering into agreement, whether or not you fully discussed the item that you're going to enter into a contract to perform. It's possible. It's a result of the consequence, and we never did it until the last 8-9 years. It's a new process for the city, relatively speaking.
Mr. Green.